Everything seems fine. Jobs are available. Shops are open. People are spending. Then slowly, very slowly, things start to feel different. Prices feel higher. Job security feels shakier. People start spending less. Businesses start earning less. More people lose jobs. People spend even less. And then the word appears everywhere, recession, and suddenly nothing feels fine at all. What is a recession? An economy is not just a word in a textbook. An economy is every single transaction that happens between people every single day. Every coffee you buy, every salary your employer pays, every product a factory makes, every service a business provides. All of it together, and that is the economy. Economies do not stay the same size. They grow and they shrink. When an economy is growing, businesses make more money, hire more people, pay higher wages. When an economy is shrinking, the opposite happens. A recession is when an economy shrinks for 2 consecutive quarters in a row. A quarter is 3 months. So a recession is officially defined as an economy that has been shrinking for at least 6 months continuously. That is the technical definition. The human definition is simpler. A recession is when large numbers of ordinary people simultaneously find their financial lives getting harder. Jobs disappearing, wages stagnating, businesses closing, savings under pressure. The number does not matter as much as the feeling, and the feeling of a recession is unmistakable. What causes a recession? Recessions do not appear from nowhere. Something always triggers them. The most common causes are these. Interest rates rising too fast. When central banks raise interest rates aggressively to fight inflation, borrowing becomes expensive. Businesses cannot afford to borrow to invest. Consumers cannot afford mortgages or car loans. Spending falls. Businesses earn less. They cut staff. Unemployment rises. People spend even less. The cycle feeds itself downward. This is called a demand shock. The engine of the economy, consumer spending, slows down suddenly. Asset bubbles bursting. Sometimes prices of assets, houses, stocks, technology companies rise far beyond their actual value. Everyone knows prices seem too high, but nobody wants to be the first to stop buying. Until one day, something triggers a collapse. Prices fall rapidly. People who borrowed to buy these assets suddenly owe more than their assets are worth. Banks lose money. Credit tightens. Businesses cannot borrow. Recession follows. External shocks, wars, pandemics, oil price crises. Natural disasters. Events that disrupt the normal functioning of the global economy suddenly and severely. The 2020 pandemic created one of the fastest recessions in history. The entire global economy shut down in weeks. Falling consumer confidence. Sometimes recessions are partially self-fulfilling. When people believe a recession is coming, they spend less to protect themselves. When everyone spends less simultaneously, businesses earn less. They cut staff, which confirms people's fears, which causes more spending cuts. The anticipation of a recession can help create one. How do you know a recession has started? Officially, you only know a recession has started after it has already been happening for months. Economic data takes time to collect, verify, and publish. By the time governments officially declare a recession, you have likely already been living in one for 6 months or more. But there are warning signs that appear before the official declaration. Unemployment rising. When businesses start laying off workers, it signals they expect a prolonged downturn. Rising unemployment is one of the earliest and most reliable recession indicators. Consumer spending falling. When people collectively start spending less, retail sales figures dropping for several consecutive months is a strong warning signal. Business investment declining. When companies stop spending money on expansion, new equipment, new hires, they are signaling they do not believe growth is coming. Inverted yield curve. This is a technical indicator that has predicted almost every recession in modern history. When short-term government bonds pay higher interest than long-term ones, it signals that financial markets believe the near-term economic outlook is worse than the long-term one. It has an extraordinary track record of appearing approximately 12 to 18 months before a recession begins. Consumer confidence surveys. When surveys show that most people expect their financial situation to get worse, spending falls. This self-fulfilling mechanism is one of the most watched indicators by economists globally. What happens during a recession? Recessions affect different people in very different ways. But here is the general sequence of events. Businesses face falling revenues. When consumers spend less, businesses earn less. First, they cut discretionary spending. Then they freeze hiring. Then they begin layoffs. Unemployment rises. This is the most visible and most painful consequence of a recession. People lose their incomes. They cut their own spending dramatically. This reduces revenue for other businesses, which causes more layoffs. The negative feedback loop accelerates. Credit becomes harder to access. Banks become more cautious. They worry about loan defaults. They tighten lending criteria. Businesses and individuals who need loans find them harder to get and more expensive. This further reduces investment and spending. Asset prices fall. Stock markets typically decline significantly during recessions. Property values often fall. Pension funds lose value. People who were counting on those assets find their wealth reduced. Governments face pressure. As unemployment rises, government spending on benefits increases. As economic activity falls, tax revenues decrease. Governments face the difficult choice between cutting spending, which makes the recession worse, or borrowing to stimulate the economy. Famous recessions in history. Understanding past recessions helps you understand what is possible. The Great Depression, 1929. The most severe economic contraction in modern history, triggered by the stock market crash of 1929. Unemployment in the United States reached 25%. A quarter of the entire workforce had no income. It lasted a decade. The Oil Crisis Recession, 1973. OPEC oil-producing nations cut oil supply to Western countries. Oil prices quadrupled overnight. Economies that ran on cheap oil were devastated. Inflation and unemployment rose simultaneously, creating the stagflation we discussed in our inflation video. The dot-com recession, 2001. The collapse of technology stock prices wiped trillions from global markets. Business investment fell sharply. The recession was relatively mild, but it ended 2 decades of almost continuous growth. The global financial crisis, 2008. The most severe recession since the Great Depression. Banks across the world nearly collapsed simultaneously. Credit froze. Trade collapsed. Global GDP fell for the first time since World War II. Millions lost jobs, homes, and retirement savings globally. The pandemic recession, 2020, the fastest onset recession in history. The entire global economy shut down within weeks. GDP fell by record amounts in a single quarter, then recovered faster than almost anyone predicted, aided by unprecedented government intervention. Every recession has been different. Every recession has ended. None has been permanent, but each one has caused real and lasting damage to real people's lives while it lasted. Who gets hit hardest? Recessions are not equal in their impact. Some people are devastated. Others barely notice. Lower-income workers are hit hardest. They are more likely to work in industries that contract rapidly: retail, hospitality, construction, manufacturing. They have fewer savings to fall back on. They have less flexibility to reduce spending because their spending is already minimal. People with high debt levels suffer significantly. When job loss hits, debt repayments continue regardless. Those who carried large credit card balances, car loans, or high mortgage debt find their repayments consuming an increasingly painful proportion of reduced income. Recent graduates and young workers face particular difficulties. Recessions reduce job creation dramatically. Entering the job market during a recession means lower starting salaries, fewer opportunities, and career setbacks that research shows can affect earnings for an entire decade afterward. Business owners face existential pressure. A business with thin margins and low cash reserves can be destroyed by even a few months of sharply reduced revenue. However, not everyone loses during recessions. People with stable jobs in essential sectors, healthcare, utilities, government, food production, often experience recessions primarily through lower investment returns rather than income loss. People with significant cash savings can buy assets, property, stocks, businesses, at dramatically reduced prices. The wealthy who stayed liquid during the 2008 crisis bought properties at fractions of their previous values. Fortunes built during recessions are often larger than those built during growth periods. What do governments do during recessions? When a recession hits, governments and central banks have a toolkit of responses. Central banks cut interest rates. Making borrowing cheaper encourages businesses to invest and consumers to spend. After 2008 and 2020, rates were cut to near zero. In some countries below zero. Governments increase spending. Building infrastructure, paying unemployment benefits, creating public sector jobs, directly injecting money into the economy to replace the spending that the private sector has stopped doing. This is called fiscal stimulus, quantitative easing. When interest rates cannot go lower, central banks create new money electronically and use it to buy government bonds and other assets. This pushes money into the financial system. It worked to varying degrees after 2008 and 2020. It also contributed to the inflation that followed. Bank bailouts. When banks face collapse, governments frequently step in to prevent it. Because banks are so interconnected, a major bank failure can trigger a cascade of failures across the entire financial system. The cost of letting banks fail is judged to be greater than the cost of saving them. The people who design the response, central bankers, finance ministers, government economists, rarely face the same consequences as the people who live through it. How to survive a recession. You cannot prevent a recession from happening, but you can make decisions now that dramatically reduce how much the next one damages your financial situation. Build your emergency fund before you need it. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses in accessible cash, not invested. Not in assets that might fall in value. Cash, available immediately. This is the single most important financial preparation for a recession. Reduce high-interest debt aggressively. Credit card debt, personal loans, pay these down as fast as possible during stable periods. In a recession, this debt becomes a crushing burden. Interest rates may rise. Income may fall. But the debt remains. Build skills that remain valuable in contractions. Jobs that exist in recessions are those providing essential services. Healthcare, food, technology infrastructure, utilities, financial management. Skills in essential industries provide the best job security. Do not panic sell investments during recessions. As we discussed in our stock market video, selling during a downturn locks in losses permanently. Recessions end. Markets recover. The investors who stayed through 2008 and 2020 recovered fully. The ones who sold at the bottom did not. If you have cash available during a recession, assets are on sale, property, stocks, businesses, everything falls in price. The people who built wealth through recessions did so by buying while others were selling in fear. Recessions are painful. They are also temporary. Every single one in history has ended. Understanding what they are, why they happen, and how to position yourself before they arrive is the most practical financial education available. Let us bring everything together. A recession is when an economy shrinks for 2 consecutive quarters, caused by interest rate shocks, asset bubbles bursting, external events, or falling confidence. By the time it is officially declared, you have already been living in it for months. During recessions, unemployment rises, credit tightens, asset prices fall, and governments come under pressure. Lower income workers, people with high debt, and young people are hit hardest. Governments respond with rate cuts, fiscal stimulus, and quantitative easing with varying effectiveness. Your best protection is an emergency fund, reduced debt, essential skills, and emotional discipline with investments. Recessions are not the end. They never have been. But the prepared survive them far better than the unprepared. This is not financial advice. Please consult a qualified financial professional before making any investment decisions. Check out other Broke Monkey videos for more financial topics explained simply and clearly. If you want to support this channel so we can keep making these videos, check out the link below. Apes together strong.